Has someone ever challenged you to something that they didn't know who are an expert at? If so, how did it turn out for you/them? I'm really good at archery. My friend and I rented him a bow at the local range and he wanted to bet me beers for every round. I told him repeatedly, no, you will not win. He could probably get lucky if we did 1 arrow shoot-offs, but he wanted to do proper 3 arrow rounds. He insisted. I drank for free all night. How good is really good, since you're comparing to someone using a rental bow? A neighbor on my block in Brooklyn challenged me to a pizza bake-off. I recently catered pizza for my daughter's school and word got around the neighborhood my pizza was pretty darn good. My first thought was, this guy is a Brooklyn native, my pizza will be chai as compared to his. But there was something about him bragging that I couldn't resist the challenge. He talked up how pizza was in his blood, how his dad ran the pizza place around the corner years ago. I remained silent and let my skills answer for themselves. I got a buddy to let us use one of Baker's Pride ovens at his restaurant. We even had total strangers try our pizzas. Every last person chose my pizza over his. I never mentioned to him that I've worked in pizza places almost every day for the last 30 years. I never mentioned that when I'm not working at a pizza place I'm making pizzas at home at least once every 2 days. I never mentioned that at 9 years old I knew that I wanted to be a pizza man. Here I'm 45 and getting ready to start my own pizza business. You go, you crazy pizza man. Wasn't me, but there's a story about an old geotechnical engineer who used to work for the company I work for. Several senior staff had to attend a meeting with the client and some government regulatory staff who were being awkward and not approving the design. This geotech guy is pretty much quiet the whole meeting. Throughout the discussion, the government guy keeps referencing this research document and shooting down anything anybody suggests. Near the end of the meeting, geotech asks government guy if he has the research paper with him. He responds yes and places it on the table. Geotech asks government guy who is the author of the paper, then slides over a business card. Turns out it's geotech's own paper that government guy has been referencing to defend his argument. Government guy went bright red and apparently approved the design the same day. A very proper, you don't know who I am, do you? Some Japanese client that studied in France asked me for a translation job, but wanted to change all my sentences to prove she was better than me at my own mother tongue. She ended up writing something grammatically correct, but that sounded so horribly sexual that if you tried and googled the terms you would only find porn and erotic novels. I had to tell my boss she was forcing me to write porn because it was for a mascara brand that was supposed to be sold in France, so he could stop her, and after that she stopped trying to best me. I took French in high school, dropped out of that class after 6 weeks with a 26 average. How is it that you have constructed an entire language where just minor tweaks can turn any sentence you say into something vulgar? Don't get me wrong, I think it's genius and impressive, lol. Edit. Here's one from English that I like. He came riding on an A. Edit 2. r/onion_guy suggested this minor change to make it better. He came riding an A. No change necessary. Edit 3. r/fearnall reminds me where the line is from. It's Bo Burnham Sonnet 155. If Shakespeare wrote a porn. A local mall had a portable climbing wall with a make it to the top and win $100 side. The route was actually pretty challenging. As I walked by, the guy asked me if I'd like to try. Nobody has made it to the top. You think you can do it, buddy? At the time I was ranked top 12 climber in my age group and kind of laughed to myself. After taking my $100 I then proceeded to call the rest of my climbing team, and one by one they went to the mall and claimed their $100. After the fourth person, the guy got suspicious and took the sign down. We later told him we were all nationally ranked competition climbers, and he got a good laugh. The company who owned the rentals was the one who lost the money. He just worked the booth and wasn't the one who lost the prize money. This happened to me too, at an amusement park. I think I was around 13, and my brother was around 10 to 12. The guy had a bunch of adults just try the wall, and failed, and my family had been watching. He tossed out, "No way, the kids can do it." We both scrambled up that wall like monkeys, and walked away with $200. Good times. My landlord tried blaming me for damage to the kitchen cabinets, but didn't know that I'm in construction, and I'm very familiar with home building codes. They placed the cabinets too close to the stove and the glue that held the laminate had melted. My old landlord tried to screw me over on our security deposit when we moved out after 10 years. Put a ton of questionable stuff on the bill, missed the window for providing receipts by a few days, and only had quotes for work that he never eventually got done. I'm not a lawyer, but my work life is all focused on telecom regulation and contracts. I also have a degree in history with a focus on legal history in some areas. So it was easy enough to get a basic handle on the state and local laws around this stuff as well as pull up case law. We had a couple back and forth interactions over email when I finally responded with each place where he ducked up, giving him detailed references to the laws in question and how they'd been interpreted by local courts. Also pointed out that some of the things he was doing were pretty clearly being done in bad faith, and that if I was able to demonstrate that in small claims court where he can't bring a lawyer, he'd potentially be liable for triple damages. He emailed me back the next day saying he just wanted to move on and not pursue the claims anymore. Stupid thing is, this was all over a couple $1,000s. He ended up selling the place for about $1.3 million, which was a nice $900K increase from when he bought the place in the 90s. Ahl. When working as a teacher, I beat a lot of students in Pokemon battles, cause they didn't think of me being like 15 years ahead of them in fighting experience. Noobs. This is how I trounce my younger siblings at Smash Brothers. Every game really. Ducking teenagers. Think they're hotches. No way their older big bro is gonna beat them this time. I have been playing since you were a baby. Oh, you got a new game. Cool. I played something a lot like it on a PlayStation with potato graphics. Get wrecked. I was a competitive swimmer for 14 years, including 4 years of NCAA, but I'm on the shorter side, so people don't know I was any good. Was at a friend's house on a lake one summer, and a macho guy challenged me to race to a buoy in the middle of the lake to prove something, I guess. The lake is deceptively large, about a half-mile across, so I warned him that if he isn't a strong swimmer it could be dangerous. He was running out of gas after about 2 minutes, so I offered to let him off the hook, but he insisted he would finish. I went to the buoy and was swimming back when I found him floundering, so I lifeguard swam him back to the house. His ego took a deserved hit that day. Don't get cocky around water, even if you think you're a strong swimmer. Edit. Thanks a ton for the W in the votes, but I want to emphasize here how quickly this kind of thing can turn dangerous. I was a lifeguard at the time, and there was another lifeguard present, but even so this was a dumb idea. Don't do dumb stuff in water. Yup, hotel pools are where I shine. Edit. I'm a former competitive swimmer too, a long time ago. Still, when I'm at a hotel pool I'll instinctively kick off a wall in a streamlined fashion or do a few dolphin kicks and take a few strokes, like you see on the Olympics underwater cameras after the flip turns. If we are in a group and playing around and someone wants to race, it's usually no contest. There's an ease of movement in the water that former swimmers possess that comes from muscle memory and tour days during your formative years. A Tinder date bet me dinner that I couldn't beat her in Smash. I've been playing competitively for around 6 years, so she ended up paying for dinner. LMAO, was she any good? My wife and I were taking an evening cruise for adults in Portsmouth Bay. The ship drove around the shipyard, where my submarine and several others were stationed. My wife and I are having a quiet drink when a really loud know-it-all starts spouting misinformation about each submarine we are driving by, calling them all the wrong names, etc. When he literally points to my submarine and says, and that is a 637 clam. My wife finally speaks up and says, actually that is a 688. The guy gets all gruff and says, well, how would you know? My wife smiles, hugs my arm, and says sweetly, that's my husband's submarine. It is the Minneapolis St. Paul, SNN 708. He turned beet red while his date laughed. I love the wife drop kicking him. Not me, but my brother and best friend. We were in Baltimore for a baseball weekend in 2009 and hanging out at a bar across from Camden Yards. They had a Silver Strike bowling video game. At our local bar back in Boston we had one as well. I'm decent at the game, but but my brother and buddy were ducking amazing at this game. Bowling 300 games and whatnot. So two dudes are playing this game and drinking. We ask them if we can play when they're done. They ask if we want to play them. We said sure. My brother and buddy destroy these guys. Like it wasn't even close. These dudes said it was a fluke and they wanted a rematch, but this time for a round of beers. Again, Annihilation City. But they kept wanting to play to eventually win a game. No lie, after 13 rounds of beers they finally gave up. They were great guys. We saw them the next day at the same bar and they walked up to us with beers in hand already and said rematch. To this day we still hang out with them whenever we go to Baltimore. And to this day, they have never won. Edit for details. The guys were buying 2 beers each time they lost a game to the 2 guys they lost to. For my brother and friend. The beers were Natty Bop, which is Baltimore's cheap gross awesome beer. I can't remember the price, but they were under $2 a piece back then. They would buy the beers and they'd just start piling up on the table next to the machine. So we were all just drinking them. I'd say around 25 to 30 beers between the 5 of us in 4 or 5 hours. Tab was probably 60-ish bucks for beers, but we were there all night getting wings and a million apps, so we all just paid the tab anyways. Sounds like they were fun people who liked having someone to bullshit with. I'm not a great swimmer, but there was a time when I would do laps for literally hours. I would go slowly to make sure that I had the energy to do the time I wanted to. This kid challenged me to race. I left him so far behind it was funny. He was about to humiliate me in front of his friends. Non-swimmers who know nothing about technique are an absolute hoot to race. Beaten my fair share of buddies who are quick swimmers and didn't know I raced competitively and went to state finals. I refuse to get in most pools now and so they think I'm scared to swim. I just hate the memories. My nephew challenged me to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate once. Super Smash nephews. Co-worker, I'm pretty good at running. I run every day. I could probably beat you in a marathon. They didn't know I used to be a pro runner. Ran under 14 minutes in the 5k, sub 29 in the 10k, and under 15 hours for 100 miles on trails. Won a national title even. So I agreed to run with them and jumped in the local marathon with no training. I took the prize purse and made myself a few $100 and took everyone out for beers with it. Was an interesting next Monday at work. Lol, takes me 14 minutes to run a mile and you did a 5k in that time. Still waiting to say the words I've been preparing for all my life. Asterisk you asterisk want to play Dr. Mario with asterisk me asterisk. You absolute fool. I'm imagining you driving around in your car and having fake arguments with people leading up to the challenge. I'm a teacher, so people try to tell me how to do my job all the time. Parents, kids, politicians, etc. How did it turn out? Welcome to my world, duckers. Homeschooling is a bitch, isn't it? Your kids are kind of horrible, aren't they? Lessons aren't that easy to plan, are they? Meanwhile, I'm drinking a beer at 10 AM while grading the assignments I posted last week. Edit, wow this blew up haha. Thank you everyone for the positive comments and gold/silver. Cleaning some things up. I'm not actually drinking a beer at 10 AM. That's clearly for this afternoon. It is Dingus Day. Parents, this was meant to be satirical. Please do not think for a second that we as teachers do not appreciate and sympathize with you all during this ordeal, especially those whom are working still. I'm not a teacher, but I talk to a couple of 7-year-olds in China on the internet to help them learn English, and that is very hard. Just graduated as a teacher and I've been working as a casual relief teacher. I play lacrosse, which is a small sport already and even smaller here in Australia. I tried out for the last World Cup team and made it to the final cut. I was team teaching with another teacher who worked at the school. Before the period he spoke to me and said, "Hey mate, we are doing lacrosse today. It's a bit of a not sport and hard to teach, so just wait over there and then you can just help with supervision and discipline." Then walked off. Being a court from an agency, didn't really know how to speak to him/speak up. I tried to speak to him and say that I played, but he didn't give me a second, so I just listened and did my thing. Few minutes into the start of the lesson I grabbed a stick and ball and just started to work my around the class, giving them pointers and hints. The way he was teaching was completely incorrect, and I didn't want to say anything, so when the kids broke off into groups, I kinda just taught them correctly. He pulled me over at a drinks break and asked how I knew so much / could perform the skills. I told him how I play lacrosse and my playing history. He asked why I didn't speak up and say anything, and I said I tried to tell him. Anyway, I ended up running the rest of the class and even ended up sitting down with him and going through the correct and easier way to teach the game and skills. He sounds like a good guy, at least didn't let his ego get in the way. Went with a big group of college students to a bar. I was challenged by a cute little girl, and by that I mean she was maybe 95 pounds, 4 minutes and 11 seconds, to a drink contest with a pint of beer. I'm 6 feet 1 inch, 200 pounds, so I just chuckled and agreed to it. It seems like I had just enough time to tilt my head back to start chugging when I hear her empty glass hit the table. Turns out she had the ability to just open her throat and pour the beer down. We dated for about 6 months after that. Seriously. Had a friend in the Navy, Scott, who wasn't nearly so cute as I'm imagining her. But he used to bet people $10 plus a refill that he could drink his pitcher before they could drink their bottle of beer. The thing was, he couldn't lose. He could literally pour a pitcher down his throat faster than beer could possibly glug out of a bottle. Scott never lost. Scott did, however, have a bit of a drinking problem. Everyone thinks they are amazing at Mario Kart. They used to be good as a kid and think they still are. I played 2 to 4 hours every day in undergrad. A couple years ago, I raced in local and school tournaments and won most of the time. I was within seconds on several course records. I have every course memorized and know exactly when to brake on every turn. I don't play much anymore, but anytime somebody sees my Mario Kart painting, I won it at a local tournament, they tell me how amazing they are. I'm happy to absolutely destroy them. It's an otherwise useless skill. Edit to answer questions. My best game is Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe since it's basically the same. I like to think I'd be good at Double Dash and MK7 since that's what I played as a kid, but I doubt I actually am. If you think you can beat me on MK64, you're right. I got humbled at a New Year's party when I warned my skills would translate, and I finished dead last. Mario Kart is honestly not super high skill, just memorization and optimization. And yes, you need to brake on most courses at 200cc. I promise y'all can't beat me on Deluxe. I can't find the painting online and I don't have it in this apartment. It's just Luigi on Cheap Beach and it's off something like Etsy, I think. I got to pick it after I won. I almost always use Donkey Kong on a bike. And my best course is Toad Harbor. That's where I was closest to beating the record. I'm curious, which Mario Kart was your specialty? Chess. I'm a chess master. I think when people hear that they're like, oh, he's really good at chess, but what it means is that I've played in international tournaments and beaten other masters and some governing body has given me a title. Anyway, I get challenged a lot by friends who think they are pretty good. What they don't realize is that your average pretty good player is getting destroyed by your average tournament player, and your average tournament player is getting destroyed by a master. I had a friend whose scores didn't align with his skill, and he beat a master once and then never played competitively again. Said he'll never ever do better than that. He still plays with the old men at the mall almost every day. Someone at a bar bet me there were only 30 days in a particular month. $20 if I could prove them wrong right then. Pre-cell phone days. I was born on the 31st of that month. Showed them my driver's license. Edit. Word for clarity edit. The person was drunk. And maybe not the brightest. Edit. My DL wasn't fake. My birthday is definitely in either Jan, Ma, May, July, Aug, Oct, or Dec. Expert at knowing things. My uncle challenged Jack Nicklaus to a golf game in college, without a clue. The humiliation burns him to this day. All I'm hearing is my uncle played around with Jack Nicklaus. I'm incredibly jealous. I was visiting Kyoto a couple years ago. I'm an American, and my wife and I walked into a tiny bar which had 5 people in suits laughing and talking in Japanese. We instantly knew that this was not a tourist bar and felt pretty out of place. The bartender spoke the most English, so I asked him what his favorite shot was, and things got a little more comfortable as we drank, and the whole bar tried to talk to us. Someone mentioned Mario Kart, and I said yeah. So the bartender points to an old Super Famicom in the corner, and apparently I have accepted the challenge. I smiled to myself, and my wife thinks it's funny, because I used to have some skill at this game. Bartender selects battle mode and the guy's ducking phenomenal. I haven't played in a few years, and he buries me in less than a minute. The whole bar is laughing, and I'm a little stunned. We're on to the second of 3 rounds. I destroy him. 3 balloons to 0. Everyone cheers except the bartender. 2 shots were put in front of me, and I throw 1 down. Round 3. We're down to 1 balloon each, and I swear it's the longest battle round of all time. I'm sweating. Shell, dodge, shell, dodge. I have him in my sights and I fire. I miss. The shell bounces off the wall and I self KO. The crowd goes wild. So that's the story of how a self-proclaimed Mario Kart expert buried himself and his country in a small bar in Kyoto. We drank a lot and made a lot of great friends that night that we'll never see again. Edit for some photo evidence, Imga. Thank you for sharing a story in which a pro met the pro he deserved to meet. You haven't buried yourself. You have shown your skill, you are able to laugh about it, and you showed a great character towards your hosts. Deleted. One day, someone is going to do this to S1 pleb. Guitar Hero. That poor dastard didn't know what he was getting into. He suggested we play, and was making joking comments about how he could totally beat me. We played on expert and I absolutely demolished him. My man was even struggling to hit the orange notes SMH. People always say how good they are at GH, and then ask what difficulty you play. Not me, but a while back a guy I knew from church growing up posted on Facebook something about crusades and medieval Christianity. A girl responded and gave X, Y, Z reasons why he was wrong. The guy responded back with, "You don't know what you are talking about. You need to do your research," and linked couple of YouTube links of armchair historians/pastors. She hits him back with a dozen or so academic sources and let him know that she was 3 years in a PhD program studying medieval history. Damn, I always wish I could follow up stories like that sometime later. Did the guy learn something, or did he drove himself deeper into misinformation with anger and resentment? Not a physical challenge, but I sell building materials for a living. Think Home Depot, but for guys that build skyscrapers and stadiums. There has been many occasions where an old man with zero construction knowledge tries to lecture me on what I do for a living. My favorite, I'm going to get my lawyer to talk to you, because you clearly don't know what you're talking about. Cool. So you'll pay someone to call me, so I can read a contract provision off the screen, which I'm doing for you for free right now? Whatever, dude. While not a pro, I'm pretty darn good at poker. The church I was at had a poker night, and I was just going to watch. They insisted I join the 25-cent game. Came home with $200 and they decided to never have a poker night again. Username doesn't check out. My office announced a laser tag team building event 2 weeks after I played in the laser tag Ultrazone National Championships, which were an actual thing in 1997. Edit. Sigh. No, this is not a him reference, which I have to specify every ducking time I talk about it. I was never of any competitive laser tag level. However, my family used to stay at this hotel/resort thing every year around Christmas, and part of the package was wristbands for unlimited laser tag. My sister and I would go down when they opened in the morning and play until they closed at night. We learned the ins and outs of that room so well, and got to competing on various things like who could keep their accuracy highest. My favorite was a challenge to only knife people. You could only shoot someone if you place your gun against their vest. We weren't amazing, but it was always fun to get a big group of kids come in and talk trash, so we would offer to 2vx them and just absolutely destroy them. My dad was into video games before they were really a thing. He had a Magnavox, a Desi, Intellivision, etc. In the 80s you could rent Nintendos and games from video stores. He would do this when he visited, and I would almost always smoke him at whatever game. I didn't see him that much, but he was visiting, and decided to rent one in the game Double Dribble, Old Northeast's basketball game. It was pretty new at the time and he knew I didn't really like basketball. He played it all day while I was in school, and when I got home he challenged me to a game. The look on his face when his 10-year-old son beat him by 20 points or so was priceless. My friends and I basically rented every game when it came out, and I had played this one a lot. I mean, it's sports but it is still a video game. I was good at games. Karma time is now my teenagers can regularly beat me at just about anything. The good old days of Blockbuster. I had a mate that would play Call of Duty with me, and I'd usually beat him in a 1v1, but he occasionally would maybe win, or at least get close, but then we played a different game. Motorstorm Apocalypse. I was a legitimate top 10 player on that game with multiple #1-time attack times etc, and he had just started playing through the offline mode and was winning the races, so he thought he was good. I warned him, but he insisted on a 1v1 to show off his skills. 2 minutes later, and I've lapped him on a 3-lap race and he's quit the race before he's finished due to the embarrassment of not being able to finish, because there's a 1-minute timer on the end of the race where anyone that hasn't finished doesn't get to finish. He never played that game again. Damn, I had the same chiz happen to me only in FIFA, and it was my cousin obliterating me. Shotgunning beers. He lost and wanted a second go, then proceeded to fall down after second round loss. Same here. Chugging skills won me many $5 bets in college. We had a golf workouting and he challenged me at golf. Now I've played golf my whole life. I also played in high school and have played at public courses every year since. He did not know this. The first hole, he gets to witness a 200-yard drive down the middle. He tries to play it off like I got lucky, but no. Every hole after that was the same. He drank a lot after the first couple holes. He, to this day, refuses to say I won because we didn't keep a score record. Something similar happened to my husband. My husband has been golfing since he was a kid. He's not amazing, but he is pretty good. Well, his work was hosting a group for a nearby tournament. It is pretty cliquey there, and when he first heard about it, he asked to join in one of the groups. They passed him over for a contractor friend of his for the group. He had told them he golfed, but I guess they didn't really believe him because he is pretty young and he mostly talks about board games and video games. Well, 3 days before the tournament one of the guys had an accident and broke his ankle. In a blind panic, the team scrambled to find someone else to fill in, or they would have to forfeit. My husband reluctantly agrees to do it. They carpooled there, and my husband says the whole time they kept trying to teach him how to play. Up to the first hole, he says they were continuously trying to give him pointers and tell him what to do and making remarks like we want to win, so listen up. The team was absolutely chiz. My husband carried them the whole way. Apparently they had never even placed before, and my husband carried them to third place where they won a crap ton of prizes. Free steak dinner to a fancy place, cash, etc. Now every time there is a tournament they try to get my husband to play because they want to win. My husband declines every time. He said it was the worst game he'd ever played in his life because of the teammates. He said his teammates were drunk by the 9th hole, made racist and misogynistic remarks, hit on the teenage girl serving them drinks. Think 50 to 60 years old guy hitting on an 18 years old. Not to mention he lost all respect for his coworkers. Mine's kind of dumb, but I think it still counts. At work I'm kind of the Google Sheets expert and I make lots of tools for different departments to use. Enter new guy who needed to collect, aggregate and display a bunch of data. My boss was like, send Wish a calendar invite so you can tell her what you want and she'll set it up for you. New guy was having none of that and insisted he was going to do it himself. Well, a week later, he finally has this cheesy sheet that doesn't have half the information we need, and we have to have the numbers for the state by tomorrow. So my boss asks me to fix it, and new guy is like, yeah, okay, that's not really possible. This is as good as it's going to get. 2 hours later, I send them both a fully functional and automated sheet that does everything we need, and we'll be able to use it indefinitely, which means next time, and every time, the stupid state report is due, it will already be done. New guy was like, I would have added that in if it had more time. New guy sucks. I don't understand these people that cannot admit that someone did something much better than they did and compliment them. Plus, his excuse is basically admitting that his time management issues. Thanks for figuring out Google Sheets and helping everyone in your work. My buddy was dismissing my advice to another friend about Overwatch because I don't play ranked at all. I did my placement games that day and ranked 3 full leagues above him and have only risen since then. Ranked Overwatch is a nightmare. Quick play is tolerable, but competitive is just too toxic. For reference, this is clay pigeon shooting, kinda known as trap in the south. Well, I'm from a rural area and not exactly super southern, so when I'd go to other trap fields to practice different conditions, there's always be a smarter or to try and place a bet with me. This is definitely an old money sport with some of the guns going upwards of $5,000. I had an old BT-100 that we got in a trade for lead shot and some cash on the side. While not cheap, it was still much lower than other people's guns and people would take that as me being a newbie. They'd learn pretty quick though, since the team I was on went to the nationals almost every year from 11 to 18. It was always funny because some would be good sports, but others would throw an absolute fit. I saw a guy damage a 10,000 Perazzi because someone else beat him before. Even funnier part is there was a guy from the county next to us who could blow us out of the water, and he always shot with an 870 pump from Walmart. Edit. Glossary. BT-100. Browning Trap Model 100. Famous for its dropout trigger, then can be replaced and repaired very quickly. Lead shot. The actual lead balls that are in shotgun shells. We made them from Wheel Weights Nationals. I started going when it was in Vandalia, Ohio. It changed to Sparta IL later. Imagine about 2 miles of trap ranges in a row. Perazzi, famous Italian shotgun, good but expensive 870 pump. Remington model 870 pump shotgun, the stereotypical pump shotgun. It's good. My shooting instructor uses to say, no matter the gun, it's the person behind it who hits. The guns all shoot straight. It was my first weapons qualification with a National Guard unit I had just transferred to. A lot of NG soldiers only shoot a rifle once a year for qualification. A soldier in the platoon I took over was joking about how lieutenants are bad at basic soldier tasks, trying to get me worked up. He bet I couldn't shoot better than him. We are not supposed to bet, so I declined any wager, but I did accept the challenge. I hit 40 over 40 like I always do. He hit the minimum, 23 over 40. He basically bet I wouldn't qualify. I've worked in the firearms industry my whole civilian career and have focused on rifle and long range shooting as my main hobby and have shot competitively. His excuses were hilarious. His sight wasn't working. He couldn't get a good position, blah blah blah. I put him on a few details for being a poor sport. Edit to all the people saying this is poor leadership and why enlisted hate officers. Lighten up, Francis. The details were KP they were in the rotation for and driving people to the PX because he was one of the few people licensed on an LMTV. This started a whole competition that lasted through deployment where soldiers bet their details. So I ended up doing more than other soldiers because my guys constantly challenged me, and really their punishment / detail was one they were scheduled for anyways if they lost against me. I've had this same experience. I grew up shooting fairly consistently as it was something I really enjoyed. I'd say 95% of the shooting I have done was outside of the military. I'm certainly not at the Olympic level, far from it. Most guys shoot 58 RDS a year, 18 to 0 and 40 to qualify. But that never stopped any of them, especially the senior NCOs, from taking cheers or having low expectations from junior officers. Frankly, I don't blame them. They were often correct. When I would zero, one of the NCOs would come over to explain to me trigger squeeze, breathing, and body position as we were walking out to check targets. When we finally got out to the target, they'd see a quarter-size grouping and remark, "Damn sir." They would move on and often ask me to coach other soldiers who were having difficulty. It's one of those things that earns you instant respect in the military. On a separate occasion, we had a senior captain in my battalion who was a real rig. Always a ball buster. Just a difficult person. I was OIC of the M4 range that day and would have to give the range briefing to every iteration on my range. This guy couldn't take any input from a second lieutenant. I got to see every own scores and have people re-qualify if they failed. He failed to qualify 3 times in a row. I eventually had to send him packing as we had to give everyone else an opportunity with the ammo constraints. He was humbled rather quickly. Didn't stop him from talking chiz again after a few days though, haha. Edit. Okay, yes, running earns you respect in the officer world too. Be a fast runner. Camped out for tickets to the Phantom Menace. Guy in a group behind me challenged everyone to Star Wars Trivial Pursuit for money. It got to my first turn and I ran the board and won without anyone else getting to go. I felt bad, so I didn't even take his money. He still accused me of having memorized the cards to cheat. Nope, just seen the original trilogy dozens of times all my life. What are the tastier questions that came up? I like to think I'm on your level due to the same experience. But do I? A buddy mine was at a concert in bad seats and started complaining about it via Twitter. All of a sudden the band starts reading some tweets and calls my friend up to sit on stage for a couple songs. They sit him at the piano and during the next song, they jokingly go okay piano solo. The crowd laughs for a second, but then my buddy just starts jamming out as he plays piano in his band. Talk about dream moment getting to play with your favorite band. Reminds me of an awesome YouTube video from a couple years back. In a Keith Urban concert, this young dude gets called up on stage since his GF was holding up a sign saying it's his birthday wish to play guitar with Keith. For those that don't know, Koo is an amazing guitar player. Anyway, the dude gets up there and Keith hands him his guitar. Pretty much everyone expecting either a choke job or a mediocre attempt. But the dude proceeds to freaking shred. Keith was like WTF. And he immediately calls back the band, who had just gone on break, and they play the full song with the dude owning the all parts including the solo. Just an amazing gotcha moment. In front of provably 15k people. Haha, yeah. So there is this old SNES game called Tetris Attack that's a Panel Del Pon port with a Super Mario World 2 theme. I played the chiz out of that game when I was growing up, and I was pretty good at it. I'm actually still half decent, and I only play every few months when I visit my family. Anyhow, I was kinda sorta seeing this guy and I have no idea how the topic came up, but he challenged me to beat him at Tetris Attack. I had sincere doubts that he had ever played before despite his posturing, and it turned out I was right. I trounced him, and he actually said, "How are you so good at this stupid game?" Practice, my dude. Years of practice. Edit. Holy chiz you guys. I can't tell you how heartwarming it is to see so much love for my favorite puzzle game of all time. I have talked to employees at retro game stores who didn't know Tetris Attack, and here is the internet proving to me that my pain is justified. I love every single one of you. Keep on chainin'. I love Tetris Attack. I had a friend shortly after high school who guaranteed me he could destroy me because he played for hours almost daily. FYI, if all you do is beat the computer players, yes, even on the secret extra hard mode, then you won't hold a candle to those who have mastered multiplayer. Probably a decade later my older bro got into the game and, while less boastful than the other friend, thought he'd whoop me. Needless to say he was slaughtered. The only people who could ever beat me were my mother and, now ex-wife, because while I was off working they'd battle it out for countless hours in addition to the time they played with me. We had single rounds that lasted over an hour and were basically endless combos. This kinda qualifies. Not me but my brother. He works for a scientific instrument company as a technical expert in gas chromatography. He and his colleagues went to a trade show to show off their new instrument. A couple of German scientists come up, ask a bunch of questions, breaking the conversation intermittently to speak to each other in German. Little do they know, my brother is fluent in German. He lets them talk amongst themselves until one of the Germans says, in German, "I bet this one is just as chiz as the last one." To which, my brother replies, in German, how it is not in fact chiz, because they've done a tremendous number of improvements. The two Germans, now stunned that they've been caught, politely thank my brother and apologize and walk away. The ultimate, no, duck you way to have handled that in my opinion. Anytime people speak a different language immediately after talking to me I can't help but think they are talking mad to do. Kind of similar, I told a guy at work that I could play guitar. He didn't believe me and challenged me to learn and play minor swing in 2 weeks. Nailed it in the time frame, performed it at work. I had only accepted to perform it to him. I'm a bit shy and don't like performing. But there were no meeting rooms free. Had to perform in front of the whole office. Not my idea of fun. It went well, and they now believe I can play a bit. The word perform and all its tenses line up perfectly on my phone, making the R's create a weird arc. Hard to explain lol. Not really a you got owned moment, but in college my buddies and I always got the new fighting game when it came out and would put in a couple hundred hours or so on it, basically ricking around with it in online or practice mode before dropping it. But during that time we'd have fight nights couple times a week where we'd all get together at someone's place and duke it out. Loser switches controllers. It's not like I never won, but I was always just middle of the pack, and after 2 years of this literally no one would consider me to be some fighting game wizard. Quite the opposite if anything. Then, for the first time ever, the group decided to pick up a third fighter instead of a second one. Soul Calibur 3 I think. And unknown to anyone in our play group I'd grinded Soul Calibur I for 10 hours a day, every day, for 3 to 4 years. Against 5 people who were doing the same, and were just as good as me. It honestly wasn't even fun. After the first half hour they were playing with 200% health, while I was playing with 50%, picking random character select, and I still hadn't parred the controller once. And thus it was tacitly agreed that we would all play second fighters from then on. Good on you for being modest about it. I'm not much a competitive person either, and will often make it easier for my opponent to win if I'm beating them that bad, unless they talk trash prior. Chicken wing eating I destroyed them. When I was young and watched Princess Bride, I thought that it would be cool to build up immunity to something like arcane powder, so I started building up a tolerance to spicy food. My own family doesn't know how much I've obsessed over it, but it's very satisfying when someone wants to test me. I was once challenged to a fiddle contest. I ended up with a fiddle made of gold. Imagine being the devil, challenging someone to a fiddle contest, cheating by using a band of demons, and still losing. I'd be pretty pissed. It happened all the time back when Guitar Hero was a big thing. I was that kid who was only a few notes shy of hitting every note in Through the Fire and Flames. People were always shocked at how well I could play, and never lost to anyone in person, only to some people online. I still play Clone Hero, and I've gotten better since then, but now my competition is a lot more fierce, since it's a niche community. I never played Guitar Hero much as a kid, but I started getting into playing Clone Hero a few months ago as well as playing some of the PS2 games. It's honestly pretty hard to focus on personal achievements in the game when the only other people still playing are less than 10 notes off of sing everything they play, while I've still got to play things on hard and slowly ease up to expert, but it's honestly pretty fun. I can't believe I never got into it when I was younger. My college has a dedicated gaming room in its central building. There's TVs for people to plug whatever into and use. I went in one day and saw someone playing Guitar Hero. He was playing on expert, so he was decently good, but not perfect. I sat down, chatted him up, and eventually he challenged me. Pro face off on Through the Fire and Flames, get more points than your opponent. I'm not perfect at TTFAF, but I figured what the hell, it'll be fun. Well, our fearless protagonist got a little too big for his boots on that one, because our man couldn't hit the intro. The higher your combo in GH, the more your score is multiplied, all the way up to 4x. If you don't hit the intro in TTFAF, and can't keep your 4x through the fast strumming at the beginning, you're immediately behind somewhere in the echelon of 30k to 60k points. The solos didn't fare him much better. He blamed his gear. A bad worker blames his fools. Edit, **TOOLS. Stupid keyboard. In primary school, I'd say grade 3 or 4, we had a head-to-head times tables tournament. The teacher would ask a random multiplication question to a pair of students at a time, and the winner progressed. I wasn't exactly an expert at times tables, but I **WAS** an expert at **6x8** point. For whatever reason, *6x8 just wouldn't stick in my head, and I had to spend additional time to bring the answer to the forefront of my mind. I was decently prepared for any other multiplication problem, so while waiting my turn I was constantly repeating in my mind *6 times 8 equals 48, 6 times 8 equals 48, 6 times 8 equals 48 over and over again. Lo and behold, when it was finally my turn to be quizzed, the teacher casually selected *6x8, to which immediately, instantly, without a single moment of pause, not an iota of time had lapsed from the teacher finishing her sentence, I yelled *48! Quote. The astonishment spread as I became a human computer in the eyes of my peers. Even the teacher was taken back. I went on to win the tournament, having already won in the minds of my would-be opponents. It was more than victory, it was complete annihilation. I cannot imagine the joy you must have felt after just hearing that. How much is 6x8? Question. Well played. In junior high I got challenged at floor hockey by this douche, who was good at literally every sport. He was a maverick, and would make fun of me. I sucked at most sports, and was not particularly fast, but I played ice hockey growing up, and would spend hours on our local basketball court practicing my stick handling. I dusted his A. I scored a natural hat trick on him. He shut up after that, and stopped making fun of me. I found myself in a discussion about vaccinations with an anti-vax couple in a FKN smokers area of a bar. I'm a scientist. I tried every logical, emotional, and personal plea, but they ended up getting mad, telling me to get ducked and walked off. My friends that heard it said I put forward a good argument and they walked away because they lost. Sucks because we all lose when they don't vaccinate their kids, yee-haw. You cannot logic someone out of an opinion they didn't logic into. When I was around 10 there was an old man with Alzheimer's in my neighborhood who would often approach my friends and I. He would ask us questions that we obviously didn't know the answer to, such as what's the square root of 2, which was one of his favorites. One day I decided I'd memorize the square root of 2 to 20 digits. Sure enough he did ask me the question again, and I was totally prepared. He was extremely impressed, and of course he forgot who I was, so would continue to ask over and over again. That's funny and sad. I never paid attention to the lesson in math class, so the other kids probably knew I didn't care. But one day the teacher asked what root 2 was to 3 places and I answered without hesitation, and everyone, using their calculators, looked at me like I was some sort of witch. We used it a lot, so it was worth memorizing. Was challenged by a friend who had played Rocket League for 300 hours approximately. He had never played with me before, because he was playing on PS4 and cross-platform was not a thing. He didn't know that I've played for about 1500 hours and ranked C3, because we had never talked about Rocket League. So I act like a noob on Discord and do crazy cheers while acting like it's my first time doing it. Needless to say, I won. I was also in that stage back when I was gold, and I thought I was a beast at the game. Now I'm diamond 3, and I think I'm trash, lol. Removed. She sounds gorgeous. Astronomer here. So if we were to just meet on the street, you probably wouldn't guess I was a scientist. I'm a woman who enjoys dresses when the weather is nice, and this was doubly true when I was a few years younger, in my 20s and single, especially at bars. So at the end of college I was doing a summer internship in Mountain View, California, where, if you went out, there'd be a lot of Google boys who would literally sometimes wear Google shirts, so you'd know they're extra obnoxious. I remember getting stuck chatting with one, and when he asked my major he sneered with the "do you really know the subject?" attitude, and asked me if I knew how the Heisenberg uncertainty principle was. And when I explained his 20 questions, said it's probably not so hard because they go easy on women because they don't want to scare them off. Then he proceeded to tell me about a lecture he attended in Mountain View that he'd been lucky enough to visit as a Google employee by Jill Tarter, https, who runs the CT Institute, and proceeded to tell me about the Allen Telescope Array, https, they were building in Northern California, because I might not know about it. I gave him a minute for his spiel, but then said I actually was *working* for Jill that summer at the CT Institute on interference mitigation for the Allen Telescope Array. And did he want to hear what she was really like, or see some pictures from the ATA site? I'd also just met Frank Drake, HTTPS, and he was really nice. Oh man, was that guy not happy. But hey, at least he stopped talking to me like right after. Different field, but it's hilarious how dudes in bars would they must know more about any topic than me because I was a young looking woman in a skirt. I don't want to get too detailed about the topic, but it was immensely satisfying when one time a guy brought up a Wikipedia article as which BTW he had completely misinterpreted as proof, and I was like, yeah, see that citation? It has my name in it. That particular guy was unusually gracious about it though. After the 20-second dumbfounded look that said you do not compute with my mental model of what a scientist should look like, he at least went, oh, I'm gonna guess you're probably right then. Basketball. So I'm actually pretty tall and I've played my whole life. In my 20s I was a pretty goofy stoner. I would show up to competitive opens gyms all over my cities, and with my long hair and tall skinny body usually get picked last or near last. Well, I can dribble, dunk, shoot threes and am 65. I was always asked back and never picked last when I went back. I feel this. I'm not 65 though, lol. I always get picked last or close to last because of how I dress. I usually dress like someone who doesn't hoop or isn't good. When I'm on the court they always regret not picking me or picking me last. It's a fun feeling when no one expects you to be good and you just run circles around everybody. Sort of. I worked with a guy who was supposed to be an expert in what we do. He would blast through jobs and hound our supervisor for more work. He would get through jobs a lot faster than I could, and I didn't understand how until I had to support one of his jobs and found out he was faking everything. His jobs didn't work, they weren't up to our standards, and when I confronted him about it, he got pissy at me and insisted I had no idea what I was doing. I had the supervisor look at his product and he was reprimanded. Then I had to work with him to get him up to speed. After 6 months he was still flailing, and I was working on his projects as much as I was working on my own. I checked on some of his work and gave him a list of problems I saw, and he lost his choose. So I said fine, you're on your own, and I told my bosses that I'd no longer be carrying him and he was on his own. They were getting ready to fire him about a week later when he quit. He found another job where he could be a project supervisor for more money and better benefits. He literally failed upwards. We sent his new company a basket of muffins and a thank you note. I ended up getting the company car, a $5 an hour raise, and a bunch of other benefits. Wait, what kind of work didn't the clients complain? Or was it database things? People say all kinds of random chews how weather and climate functions. I'm a meteorologist in disguise as a data scientist, but has a master's and a PhD in meteorology. When I politely and gently inform them how things actually work, people are usually super interested to know more. But occasionally I got something like, oh yeah. And how do you know? Well, I have published several papers on the matter, would love to discuss it all night. So far, thief will back down after that. Edit. Most common claim I've heard must be that the same weather as the day before acts as a better forecast than the weather forecasts. So attractively simple claim, yet so inaccurate, for the mid-latitudes where I live. Edit 2. For climate change, the top thing I hear is that they don't account for clouds in the climate models. Of course they do. It's a massive component of understanding climate. Ridiculous. But clouds are very difficult to model very well due to their complicated interactions and massive range of scale micrometers to kilometers. Close bracket. It certainly works pretty well for places like Alaska. What's the weather tomorrow? What do you think it is? Cold. It's going to be cold. A 1v1 on gun game on Nuketown on Black Ops 2. I only try to demote my friends in that game by knifing them. That's the only fun I get out of it. My brother had claimed that wind parks in Germany were massively unpopular with German citizens and barely producing any energy compared to the German coal industry. I had just finished my thesis on that very topic. German here. I can imagine how your brother concluded that they are not popular. Are you a German? If not, one hint on German culture: the fact that Germans discuss everything into details, listen to every opinion, wanting everyone to share their positions, is one reason for German over engineering, as people are always expecting and looking for the perfect solutions. But it is also reason why outsiders think that Germans are always negative. You look on a specific topic, you will find one German positive position and immediately 9 others will show up telling you why you are wrong. However, this expert discussion coming from the negative analysis and speaking it out has nothing to do with the German overall acceptance on this topic. A former German expert and consultant to several US presidents concluded it by saying Germans have a culture to follow 2 concepts in parallel. While I'd never claim I was an expert, I used to be pretty damn good at pool. My aunt and uncle had a pool table downstairs and my parents, for a variety of reasons, would go over regularly and spend all day there. There was nothing else for us, me and my brother, to do, so we just played pool all day for years. Eventually we got bored and saw that he had a book on trick shots, so we started doing that for fun. Never really mastered them, but they made for really good practice in understanding how to get the ball to do what you want. So anyway, for my buddy's 20th birthday he wanted to go to a pool hall and invited a ton of people. Then he told it was going to be a tournament, drinks for individual games, and a 50 over 50 type of deal for the winner. He gets half regardless, because it was his birthday. Insisted I come, and I caved eventually. Get there, first game, they break, and that was the only shot they got. Rest of mine were pretty similar. At the end I just looked at him, told you not to invite me. Found out after that a bunch of them had never even played pool before. Felt pretty bad, so I took the money and bought everyone drinks with it. I have similar stories. I don't consider myself a great pool player. I played league pool for about 10 years, starting all the way out by dropping down to a 2 and bouncing up and down, getting better over time. But when you know people that can actually play well, you don't ever feel like you're really that great of a player. And then every once in a while somebody wants to challenge you at the table in a bar or wherever, and you suddenly remember that the majority of the population doesn't even know it's possible to control where the cue ball stops. Some guy tried to hit on me by drawing me within a minute while I was with my now husband / then boyfriend and best friend. We indulged him. I asked if I could do one in return and blew his out of the water. Then I introduced my boyfriend. He bowed out gracefully and we laughed, and I was incredibly flattered. Really creative way to hit on someone, and I think we ended up buying him a beer. Clever act from your boyfriend to not go all macho when another dude hits on you. Removed. It's nowhere near world record time, I mean. It's within 15 seconds of the world record. That's pretty close. Edit. It's a joke. I know it's not very close. I had my ex-fiance's little brother challenge me to a game that he was the master of. The game was Halo Combat Evolved. I play this all the time, so I'm gonna kick your A. He squeaked. Choose any map you want. I replied. He chose Hang 'em High. After loading in, I stood there for about a minute or so. He chuckled as I fumbled with the controller. It's been a while since I've played this, I say. Unbeknownst to him, I had played that game every day since I got it when it released. And by every day, I mean every day. I played Halo into the ground, every difficulty, and by the end I was just goofing off on legendary with self-imposed challenge runs like only Covenant weapons or pistols only. It was fun. He beelines for the rocket launcher and the sniper rifle. I take the pistol and then proceed to open a can of Whooper on this 13-year-old that I still like to reminisce about to this very day. Sniping an angry squeaker halfway across the map using only a pistol, you can imagine the enjoyment. We only played the one time. I once went to a museum with my sister and her friend, who I hadn't met before. We got to the Greek art bit and her friend started telling me how she was super into Greek myth, and I thought that was cool because I was, unbeknownst to her, doing a master's in it at the time and also keeping a blog of myth retellings, which was pretty popular, and it was a relief to have something in common with this stranger. She then got weirdly haughty and told me she probably knew more myths than I did, so, being polite, I didn't challenge her on it and just asked her to tell me her favorite so that we could have a conversation about it. She proceeded to tell me the myth of Daedalus and the Minotaur. I asked her how she'd heard of that one, because it's fairly obscure. She told me she'd read it on a viral blog post on a blog about mythology. It was my blog. How is Daedalus and the Minotaur obscure? I hear it in almost every mythology book I have. This wasn't me, but my mate and my boss. My boss is well known to be a betting man and luck really loves him, since he's never yet lost an in-house bet. So my mate decided to boast that he could keep up with my boss on one of our specialized machines. My boss managed that specific machine for years, and to this day, is still faster than me. He took him up on it, and the wager was made on a bottle of their preferred alcohol. Obviously my mate lost the bet, and now owes my boss a bottle of Jack Daniels. I tried to warn him. Am I just lost, or does this story in no way at all explain what sort of machine this could be? As I'm reading it, this could be a tractor race, speed third printing, a pinball machine, a bike race, or just about literally anything. When I was a teenager, my buddy and I went to a coffee shop and there were these two super nerdy guys playing chess. They had their own timers and everything. I'm a decently book smart guy and know how to play chess, but like just the very basics. Anyways, my buddy thinks I'm some kind of genius, God bless his soul, so he tells the guys they should play me. So I sit down and play one of the guys. I swear, I didn't really know what I was doing, and was just moving randomly with no actual strategy, but through blind luck somehow, I put him in check. The guy freaks out and is like, OMG, I can't believe I didn't see it. I guess I had actually put him in checkmate without even realizing it. He begged for a rematch, but I just walked out of there looking cool. In my case, my friends started playing Overwatch and didn't know I play 3100 to 3250. I made a smurf and started playing with them. I didn't really try because I didn't want to mess up the algorithm and have two fresh players. They're definitely not good enough at that point to be in plat/dire. In plat or dire, so they kept on calling me trash since I was playing in a DPS main, Tracer Doom Genji, and didn't really do anything other than sleep and heal. They asked me to 1v1 them, so I did. They beat me multiple times, but once they started calling me dogches and I shouldn't play this game, I obliterated them. Think Kabaji/Dafran going absolutely berserkers Tracer. They ended up not talking to me for 1 week. I was out skating in my driveway one day practicing a difficult trick for me over a 6-inch tall board. I had it on its side trying to land the trick from only 6 inches in height, and I kept screwing it up for a good hour. I was trying to land a 360 heel flip, and I always had trouble with that trick, cause I skate goofy to begin with. My neighbor must have been watching, because he comes out, grabs the board I'm jumping over, and turns it on its side so now it's 2 feet tall. He pulls $100 bill out of his wallet and says, if you can jump over the board and land it, then I'll give this to you. What he didn't know is that I was chesty at the trick I was practicing, but among my skater friends, I was known for my ridiculously height. I'm not very tall, but I could put my knees to my chest in a jump and clear 30 inches regularly. So I took the bet, backed way off, took a running start, cleared the board, stuck the landing, and came to a screeching sideways stop about 6 inches from him. He knew he got played and just laughed while he gave me the money. Good thing too, cause I needed a new deck right then pretty badly. Or I like this one, it's sweet and deceiving. I have studied memorization techniques and mnemonics. I decided to have a bit of fun with my teacher. He wanted us to write down a list of 20 items. He was the type of guy to quickly call you out for not paying attention in class. I sat there memorizing the list in my head, knowing full well he would see me not writing anything down. He chewed me out for not taking notes, as predicted. He took the bait. I said I have it all in my head. I knew he would call me out the next day and have me recite the list. The next day he turns to me in the middle of his lecture and has the biggest smug smile. So roller derby 88, what were those items from yesterday? I immediately proceeded to list them in order without hesitation, then listed them backwards. His smile grew bigger and bigger and the rest of the class was cracking up. Memorization techniques? That sounds cool as hell. Got any good articles or info about them to share? This guy trying to be a major alpha at any interaction with another male challenged me to a distance race, saying they could run longer than I could. I knew they weren't a runner at all, but they did not know I run ultra marathons and had recently set the course record in a 50-mile race. Well, I said sure, and we set out the next morning at 6 AM round a track with 3 of our mutual friends watching. I just trailed behind him by like 20 feet at a casual pace. That way he'd always be expending energy trying to put distance in between us. Surprisingly, he kept that up for like 4 miles, which is a lot for an on-runner. I eventually ran up to him and stuck with him for another mile talking about my running accomplishments and how this was a stupid thing to try and be better at. Eventually our friends wanted to leave and said it was the last mile, so I was like, if you want we can run in together. He agreed. But then the very last lap started. He said sorry, but I'm gonna win, and tried to speed up to par me. I was like okay you stupid bitch, and dropped my pace to like a 4-minute mile and came in like 150 meters ahead of him. He was full of excuses and challenged me to a sprint a few days later. I also completely wrecked him at that. Just give it up dude, you don't have to be alpha all the ducking time. Edit. I recall one of the reasons he still thought he was better was that he was in front of me 90% of the race, even though that was my strategy to force him to run at an uncomfortable pace. The pace was like a 10-minute mile. The 50-miler I had just won a few weeks prior I ran at his average of 8:20 a mile. Ah damn, the ducking ego on people, man. He could have just admitted it with a laugh, but no. A guy I went on a date with tried to serenade me with his okay piano skills. He was incredibly patronizing to me and tried to explain to me what the notes were even when I told him I'm also a pianist. So after his endless explanations I asked him to move over on the bench so I can try to play. I'm a 2-time Carnegie Hall pianist. He never called me back afterwards. Worth it. Congratulations! Exclamation mark. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome dude. Thanks for watching.